I'm afraid we need to use math.
Hey, what's going on, guys? A while back I organized a chart for Grimdon's resist reduction. In it I compared all resist reductions for every class combination, assuming the skills are soft capped. Since then I've included a little bit more content because within the community I often see people asking, how does resist reduction stack? Do these stack together? How can you tell? Etc. So in this video I want to answer, why is resist reduction important? What are the differences and how is it calculated? In addition, I want to show off a calculator that I've developed for both Grimdon and Grimarillion's resist reduction as well. I'm really proud of it and I think you guys will find it extremely useful. There's a link in the description where you can download these charts for Grimdon and Grimarillion at any time. Resist reductions are just what they sound like. They are debuffs to enemies' resistances that cause enemies' defenses to weaken to specific damage types and overall increase the player's total DPS. Whenever constructing a new build, it's important to identify similar damage types and synergizing resist reductions. This will result in being able to capitalize on your enemy's weak point and maximize your build's potential. But how do you know which resist reductions stack with each other and which don't? Well, there are three categories of resist reduction that can appear on skills, procs, equipment, and devotions. They each have their own set of rules and complexities. Category A is phrased in the descriptions as a flat number, reduced targets X resistance. A couple examples of these are the skill modifiers such as Break Morale from the Soldier's Warcry skill, and Foul Eruption from the Necromancer's Ravenous Earth. These types of resist reductions are an absolute flat reduction to the enemy's resistances. So if a skill says it reduces resistance by 30 and the enemy has resistance of 70, the resistance is now 40. The player's attacks now do 30% more damage. Resist reduction and damage per second is a 1-to-1 ratio. Debuffs in Category A can bring enemies' resistances below 0 into the negatives, but they do not stack with any resist reductions of the same category. So those two examples I listed before, those aren't going to stack together. Just pick the highest value from Category A. Category B is much more accumulative. The phrasing for this is negative number percent X resistance. Devouring Swarm from Shaman and Curse of Frailty from the Occultist are perfect examples of this. These are also flat reductions to the enemy's resistances. Category B stacks with all categories including its own and will absolutely bring enemy resistances below 0. Combine all resist reduction for Category B. So far it's pretty easy math, right? If you explore my chart of all Grimdon class combinations, you will discover all that I've done is take the highest value between Category A and added it to the sum of the values in Category B. Each column is color-coded to easily identify the highs and lows for each damage type. Calculations don't become too complicated until you introduce Category C. Resist reductions in Category C are most commonly found in devotion constellations, however there is some gear that also provides this type. It's also found in some mod classes. Category C is worded as N% reduced targets X resistance. So the only difference between the wording in Category A and Category C is the percent sign. This is not a flat reduction but rather a multiplicative factor. So instead of reducing an enemy's resistance by a flat amount, a percentage is reduced instead. So think 10% reduction to an enemy with 80 resistance. The amount of resistance reduction is 8. Category C debuffs do not stack with the same category, but will stack with categories A and B. Also, they will not bring enemy resistances below 0. However, if the enemy resistances are already below 0, it will reduce them further. Think that's complicated? Here's how the total resist reduction is calculated when considering all three categories. Step 1. Subtract the sum of all category B from the enemy's base resistance. Step 2 has two options depending on if the enemy's resistance is now negative or positive. Basically, you just multiply the enemy resistance by 1 plus or minus C over 100. Category C over 100 basically just converts the fraction into a decimal. So if it's 20%, you multiply the enemy resistance by 1.2. And then finally, subtract the highest value from category A, and this will result into the final value of the enemy's debuffed resistance. So I will walk you through an example. We have enemy resistance of 0. Category A is 32. Category B is 53. And category C is 20%. So step 1, we're going to subtract category B from our resistance, which is 0 minus 53. That gives us an enemy resistance of negative 53. We now take that negative 53 and multiply it by 1 plus 20 over 100. So basically 1.2, which gives us negative 63.6, which we're going to round up to 64. And then finally, we'll take our negative 64 resistance and subtract our category A, and we end up with a total value of enemy resistances of negative 96, just as an example. If you practice this, you will find that category C is most effective when enemies have high resistances and less effective when they have low resistances. For example, 20% of 80 reduces resistances by 16%, but 20% of 10 only reduces enemy resistances by 2. Some people find that category C is not effective enough to use, others are happy to incur slightly more DPS. It will most likely depend on the build and how much resist reduction it already has. So overall, when it comes to DPS, resist reduction is going to give you the most bang for your buck. Your increase in damage is directly proportional to the decrease in your enemy's resistances. The 3 different categories of resist reduction have their own complexities and sets of rules, but once you learn them, it's easy to maximize your build's potential. And yes, before anyone asks, these same rules go for Grimarillion. The same rules also go for debuffs to offensive and defensive ability, as well as damage reduction. On the last tab, I have developed a calculator which you can download from the link in the description below. Simply select any 2 masteries from Grimdawn or Grimarillion in the drop downs, and the values will automatically populate and total resist reduction will calculate at the top. I have also added drop downs for resist reduction through devotion procs, and a space to enter your own values for equipment if that's something you wish to do. Everything is fed into the algorithm and calculated as a single value at the top. Players can quickly test and discover what 2 masteries will synergize well together. As of right now, the drop-downs do not work in the web browser, so you will need a working version of Excel to download and use the calculator. Otherwise, you will just have to go by the charts. If anyone knows where I can upload this where the drop-downs will function but still be read-only, please let me know in the comments. If you guys found this insightful, I hope you share it with the community as an easy way to help new players. If you want to help out the channel, please hack and slash those like and subscribe buttons. Check out our Discord and stay excellent.
So what do you say? You up for making some fat stacks?
I'm out there making fat stacks.